you either got to not let it happen at all, or you got to let it go for at least the guy not throwing the first punch to have a way of being able to get back into it. And then obviously too, the advertising and the promotional side. I still don't know if there's been any posts on NASCAR social that hasn't had to deal with a fight since Sunday night. So, they're promoting it, but yet they don't want us doing it, or they penalize you for doing it. So I'm guilty of it. I did it back in 2017. Logano and I wasn't pleased with him. He crashed me for third place on the final lap of the race. And I just walked right on down there. And again, I knew to be the first guy to throw the punch. So I didn't even talk to him. I literally just threw. And then the whole team gets in there and the scuffle happens, right? So that's just, I guess, a part of it. We all want to have clearer rules, but obviously too, we're not WWE. So if we're not going to set up clear and concise areas for us to fight in, then I don't know that we need to be fighting.
When it comes to the fight, and I heard Denny Hamlin's take on this, and mine is similar. I feel like when you get wrecked on lap 2, and then the great tweet from Dale Earnhardt Jr. saying, hey, we better cement up all these tunnels so that none of the drivers can leave. Yeah. So Ricky's all fired up and pissed when he does his interview. And he goes, Bob Pocker asks him, how are you going to respond? Why don't you watch afterwards? And so to me, it was almost like Ricky, because he had to wait 2 hours. Yeah. He felt like he then had to respond. I'm sure at that point he'd cooled down, he'd showered, he put on the fun shorts and all that. And then even when he threw the punch, it was like at that point, Kyle was getting ready to apologize and say, okay, if that's the way you saw it, I'll check the replay. It wasn't like he punched him immediately. They're 25, 30 seconds in, and it didn't even seem very heated, but I feel like, to use a poker term, Ricky felt like he was pot committed. He had already told everybody he was going to fight him, and he basically had to throw the punch at that point.
Yeah, you got to be careful with your words, dude. I mean, you really do. He could have said that and then left the racetrack if it had a tunnel. But, he sat there and stewed for, an hour or two and still there. And he made that comment. I don't know, once he made that comment, if he thought he then had to follow through with it because he made the comment. The telling one was when he said, hold my watch, right? That refers to Richard Childress jumping on Kyle Busch a few years ago. And he made Austin Dillon hold his watch while he pounded on Kyle's head, I'll tell you one thing, Kyle's head it's cost a lot of people a lot of money. There's been a lot of fans off of Kyle's head, people beating on his head. But I don't know. In our sport, man, you've just got to, how can I say it? Your actions and the way you do things. And if you say things and don't follow through with it, everybody within the garage area picks up on it. And they think, well, we can do whatever we want with that guy, right? But he goes out there and says it, and then, he tries to lay a punch. It wasn't really he comes around pretty good, but he didn't have a lot of strength behind that punch. If you look at it, the direction the punch was going and the way it landed, it really didn't mount to anything, okay? And not that I'm a fight connoisseur, but I have seen some brawls and been around a few and how that works. But, he backed himself in a corner, dude, by saying that. And, he could have said it, left the racetrack, and probably everything would be all right, and everybody would be looking for the big wreck this week at Charlotte. But, the way it worked out, he was stuck in there. And I don't know how much was still anger and how much was, I gotta do what I said I was going to do, because, he had a good poker. I'll give him credit for this. He had a good poker face when he was talking to Kyle Busch, right? I mean, it looked like he looked like somebody that, you're not really going to have to protect yourself from a swing right now. He was pretty much under control and all that. But, why in the hell do these dads always have to get in these fights? Charlie, why do they do that? I mean, I go back to Logano's dad, right? He got thrown out, suspended for a while. I forget who it was, whipping up on Joey, and he got in the middle of it, so they had to ban him from the racetrack. I remember the Bush's dad being in the middle of these squabbles sometimes, In short track, I tell you, short track racing coming up, a lot of times it's the moms. It's the moms you got to watch out for, right? It's like, because the moms, I mean, they'll get in the middle of this stuff. And who was it that time at Wilkesboro when Tiny Lund, remember that? They got in a big fight with the Petties after the race, and Tiny, was a big man, and I guess Morris or Maurice was into it with them, and they talked to Tiny afterwards, and he said, "Well, I don't mind fighting Richard or Maurice or Dale or any of those guys." He said, "The problem is when you go pick a fight with them, you got to fight the whole family." And in that particular fight, Lee Petty's wife, Richard Petty's mama, came over there and started beating Tiny Lund in the head with her purse that had a gun in it or something heavy, right? And it was, yeah. And I could go back to a lot of moms getting involved in this stuff, taking care of their kid or trying to protect their children, right? But for the dads to be doing it on this stage, I'm a little uncomfortable with that one. I really am. I truly am.
Yeah, and if you look at the replay, at first I thought Ricky Stenhouse Sr. just grabbed Kyle, but then you see we're breaking this down like the Zapruder film now, and it sure looked like Ricky Sr. got a nice little right uppercut that was kind of shielded by his body. It looks like he got a little right uppercut to Kyle as he was taking him down, and then Kyle got some good shots on Ricky's dad as well. Here's what I think is unfair about the way that NASCAR, I don't even want to say allows drivers to fight, because they don't really allow the fight to happen. When I look at sports where you're allowed to fight, I'm not talking about boxing or UFC, which is fighting, but I'm talking about hockey.
Right.
If hockey players want to fight, they fight. It's fair. It's fair. Nobody jumps in until somebody's really getting pounded or they hit the ground, and then safety is a concern, but it's fair.
Right.
And what I don't like about NASCAR fights, this happened last year with Ross Chastain versus Noah Gragson. Look, Ross Chastain got his punch. Noah Gragson wasn't allowed to retaliate because everybody grabs him. And that was kind of the same thing. Look, to me, Ricky got his punch in, but then all of a sudden when Kyle tries to retaliate, he's got 4,000 people on him. So I think they have to make it a little more fair. I don't know how you do that, but it always bothers me when the second guy, I don't think, is allowed to fairly retaliate.
Yeah. And I see this on social media, but there's the big dude that's always in the middle of the fights, and he's from NASCAR. Like somebody says he's the head of security for NASCAR. I don't know, but he's the one that seems like never lets the second guy get the punch in. And every time there's a fight, you know who I'm talking about, Charlie, right?
Yes.
Big old dude, got a NASCAR shirt.
The black guy, right?
Yeah, the big black dude, man.
Yes.
Every time there's a fight, he's right there. And the second guy cannot get the lick in. I see people on social media fussing and raising Cain about that. Tell that guy to stay away from these fights. But that is true. They do that. But it's what really surprised me. Well, man, there's so much about that fight. When they showed Busch walking to his truck, and there sits the dude in his shorts, his Bermuda shorts, chilling, just sitting there waiting on Busch to show up, right? And nobody's around, and they're sitting there when they start talking for the videos, there's nobody around. And in 3 seconds, when Stenhouse throws the punch, there's like 2 or 3 dozen people around this all of a sudden. I'm not sure where they were all standing and sitting back. But I'm going to tell you something, man. The coolest deal of this whole fight was old Big Country, Big Bubba, whoever the hell he is, the guy with Busch that was throwing him off the trailer. Did we ever figure out who that is? Do we know who that is? Have we figured that out yet?
It's obviously a Kyle Busch crew member. I did find his name. Somebody had his name on Twitter when it happened, and I can't remember his name. We should know his name, though. You're right.
Yeah. But it was cool. If you noticed, I mean, you could tell that guy's been around because he was in the middle of that stuff. He never threw punches. He was just grabbing those guys by the shirt collar and throwing them off the truck. Get away from our truck, right? That's a guy. What that is, Charlie, that's a guy that's been in scuffles before, right? He understands what it means to actually throw a punch and get punched. But he wasn't doing that. He was just trying to clear the scene. I thought that was the funniest part of the whole deal. But the fighting stuff. I mean, now we got into the sporting, right? The NASCAR's fighting Stenhouse 75,000 and all that, and everybody's fussing about that. You can't promote the race, you can't promote the fight, which they'll do, and then find the guy also. I'm not sure about all that, but it's always been prevalent. Here's the issue, but here's one of the problems with this deal. We as a sport try to remain clean and all that, but everybody knows that when two cup guys get in a scuffle after the event or whatever, that's going to generate interest. It always is. Go back to '79, right? The famous Daytona 500, Yarborough and Allison's. That fight is still replayed, right? So then you have a faction of our sport that wants nothing to do with that. I noticed there's a couple reporters or beat writers that are really raising Cain about this thing and the fighting becoming the big issue, and those guys just don't want any part of that. But the problem is, it is part of our sport. It always has been and always will be. It's called passion. It's like Kenny said, it's everybody's passionate about this, and that's what happens. But here's the issue. We have Saturday night bull rings all across this country, short tracks, right? And I've been involved with some promotions. I understand the promoter's side of these things. And the worst thing that happens at these Saturday night bull rings is when competitors get in fist fights, right? Because it becomes they carry these fist fights on out a little bit further. It becomes more of a brawl, and you're sitting there as a promoter trying to project a family sport. You got your man and his wife and 3 kids sitting in the grandstands, right? And then you've got your drivers, and everybody's on edge. The promoter's not making any money. The drivers and teams are losing money, but they're doing it for fun. And all of a sudden, you got fights. And as a promoter, it's the last thing you want to happen, because you cannot promote that fight at your local short track to bring people the next week. You can't do it. Don't work. It don't work like it does with NASCAR. So they try to keep it clean. If somebody gets to fight at most of those places, they ban them, they bar them, right? And it's just a terrible, terrible. Believe what I'm telling you, folks. Short track promoters do not want any part of this, right? So they do everything they can to try to keep it out. Well, what happens? These guys that are running these Saturday night racetracks and promoters, they turn on the friggin' Cup race, the biggest deal in the world, and there's the big deal that everybody aspires to be. There they are fighting, right? And you're sitting there like, I don't want that at my short track. So that's a hindrance when they have these things. That's probably, to be honest with you, Charlie, and to everybody's a secret, that's probably the only downside to these fights that happen, because the upside is it's so good to talk about. It draws interest. I mean, hell, we're on ESPN, we're on McAfee show. Everybody, right? Everybody had the clip of that. They were talking about it Sunday morning or Monday morning. Every news outlet in America had the fight on, right? So it's like Big Bill France used to say, publicity is publicity, bad publicity is still publicity, right? So, but if it just didn't trickle down to what short track promoters and those drivers are trying to do, I would. That's all to me. That's the only downside to it. As long as nobody gets hurt, because we can sit here and talk about it and laugh about it, and joke about it, and it's fun. Somebody gets hurt, then yeah, all right, we got to take a different stance. But for, I don't know. I enjoy the stuff. I just enjoy it.
Oh, it's great. And by the way, while you're talking, I feel like we owe it to the guy to find his name, since he was clearing everybody out like the Royal Rumble. It's Justin White. So Justin White, Kyle Busch's crew guy with the zone fire suit, just eliminating folks off the stage. And he was not fine. So the 2 crew members that were fine were from Ricky's team. That's Keith Matthew, suspended 4 weeks, Clint Myrick, 8 weeks, Ricky's dad suspended indefinitely. Ricky gets $75,000 indefinitely. Don't you think they're going to say, hey, why don't you stay away from the track for the rest of this year and then let things kind of simmer, and we'll probably let you back next year, don't you think?
Yeah, we'd have to go back and look at how they treated Logano's dad. Kind of a similar situation. Go back and see when he could come back. And that's probably going to tell Mr. Stenhouse when he's able to come back. Okay. Yeah, but Jason White, you said Justin White.
Justin White. Yep.
Justin White. Whoever you are, Justin, you're my hero, dude. When I get to the next racetrack, I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna sorry about that, folks. That's high technology at work, folks. I'm gonna come and get your autograph, Justin. I am, man. You're my hero. Just because
that's funny.
You give me happiness.
I hadn't thought about that. Obviously, the way the internet especially works and social media, you become a sensation
Yeah,
instantaneously.
yeah,
And now
you
thinking
do.
about that, this guy's been all the memes and all the gifs, as the kids call them. And think about it. There's going to be kids now that probably print out, or somebody NASCAR should make money off this. They should have some really nice glossy photos of Justin White throwing somebody off the truck trailer, and he should be
Yeah.
autographing those with a nice silver Sharpie, because I would take one of those for sure.
Exactly. And they could use him as a promotion of what to do when you want in a fight. This guy tried to stop a fight. And that's what we're trying to project to everybody in America. This guy's our hero. We don't want fighting, but we want him breaking up fights and throwing people off the truck. Great
Yeah.
promotion for NASCAR. Makes everybody's happy now, dude. Everybody's happy. Nobody can
I'll,
fuss about that.
right. I'll tell you what. And I agree. You can't fine Ricky, in my opinion, and also promote it. It just makes no sense. But
Yeah.
I think the way the fight ended, if you think about storytelling, beginning, middle, end. I mean, the way that Kyle yells at Ricky and basically says, I suck just as bad as you.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
go. I
Yeah.
mean, they're both frustrated. Ricky's running in the 20s, whatever. Kyle obviously usually he's a champion. He's usually winning races. This year he isn't. They're both frustrated. But I thought the way that he ended it, just saying, hey, I suck just as bad as you. Let's go. Is just like two frustrated dudes.
Very frustrated. And our boss Kenny, I think the other day used the word passion or compassion or passion, right? And it unless you're into this sport, unless you come through as a driver, dead ass broke or whatever, and fought and scratched and crawled your way to that division, the pinnacle of auto racing in my mind, and you're there, and you're once you get there, then the stuff that it takes to stay there, the driving, of course, and performance on the racetrack, but everything off the racetrack, the political stuff, the PR stuff, all the stuff you have to accommodate as a driver. And then you do all this stuff, you go through all this in your life, and all of a sudden you're running like crap, right? And you cannot let that go. It's just it's all consuming. It's all, I don't know how to say it. I said this when I started. I don't know how to say this, but you cannot explain to somebody that's not or never been in that situation what it means to be in that situation, because it's your whole being, it's your whole life, it's everything you've worked for, and you feel like in that moment that it's being threatened and it's being taken away from you, right? And that's why Ricky was so compassionate or so full of so much passion about what he was going to do. That's why Kyle reacted with "We both suck," right? Let's go. It's just all consuming, and everything you've worked your whole life for. In that moment, the feeling is this guy's trying to take it away from me. Okay, and that's really explains a little bit why these guys do and act the way they do, because in the moment, man, there's nothing else any more important than this guy is basically trying to take a gun and shoot me. He's trying to kill me, trying to end my career, trying to end what I've worked for. And you do whatever you've got to do, whatever your mindset is, and whatever however you handle things in your life, that's what you revert to. And most of the time, it's barbaric, right? It's just barbaric. And that, dude, let me tell you something. I cannot say names. I got a good story to tell you, but I cannot say names, Charlie. And it's such a good story, but I cannot say names. But if it's all right, should I do that without giving the folks names?
Sure. And then
All
let
right,
people they can guess.
all right. We were at Rockingham one time. This was very, very, very early in my career cup, and I parked in the garage area. There's a multiple winner driver, okay, that leading the race, almost got it won. There is a future cup champion pitted, come out of the racetrack with the new tires, clipped the leader of the race and wrecked him. Right. I come in, get out of my car. In those days, you pull your car up to the back of the truck. Right on the right side of me is a multiple winner driver truck. On the left side of me is the future cup champion truck.
And what year is this about?
Well, I don't want to say, if I say the year, everybody could go back and figure this out. Let's just say very, very, very early in my career. All right.
Okay.
Like you talking 91, 92 probably. So said driver that wins a bunch of races gets out of his car, walks by me. Hey Rick, how you doing? Or something like, how'd your day go? I said, well, whatever. And he's smiling. And he walks by me and he goes right by my car and goes down in between my truck and the future Cup Champions truck. And I turn around and look. Well, there's the future Cup champion walking between our trucks. The multiple winner guy says something to him. The future champion turns around. The multiple winner comes from, and I tell people this story all the time. He comes from, seems like China with his right fist, comes straight up in the air and hits the multiple champion or the future champion right here. And the guy comes off the ground and he goes back and his hands are on both sides of the truck or this truck and this truck as he goes back and lays him out cold. Right. And I'm watching this. The multiple winner guy comes walking by me grinning. All right, Rick, have a good week, buddy. See you next week. And walks on down, not just grinning, not sweating. And I look around and the future champion's sitting there. I said, he's done killed him. He's done killed this dude, right? And finally, some crew members come and they get him up, and everything's fine. And nobody knows about it. No reporters on it. There's no TV. Okay. And I'm like, because this was my really early in my Cup career. I knew kind of how things worked, through the Busch series and all the outlaw and Saturday night bull ring stuff we used to do. I kind of knew how you handled things. And basically, in those days, you just handled stuff, right? Media didn't get involved. You didn't count on your dad fighting for you. You didn't count on the media going into press and doing all this crap. You had to work your deal out with the driver, right? And most of the time, it didn't revolve around fighting. Sometimes when it got bad enough, it did. There's no question. But most time you could work things out. Everybody understood. But when I saw this happen, I'm like, okay, they do the same shit here in Winston Cup racing that I've done my whole life to patrol yourself, right? You're talking about policing ourselves. We've heard that term, and I know you fans have heard this, that we police ourselves. It's a self-policing sport. What I just told you is what the essence of policing ourselves means, right? Because when it was over, those two drivers, as far as I know, never had any more trouble. There were no fines written down, right? Dude, I learned of a story also last week at the alumni group, and I pride myself in knowing everything or pretty much everything that was going on in our garage area during my tenure there. This one I missed. A young driver at North Wilkesboro one time had a little problem with Dave Marcus. This young driver, when the race was over, went all the way from one end of pit road to the other end of pit road to get in Dave Marcus's face, right? The end result was Dave Marcus cold cocked him, knocked the crap out of him. The said driver then walked back down pit road to the red truck and went to Mr. Beatty talking about what had just happened. Dick Beatty was the leader of our sport then. He controlled the garage area. Dick Beatty said, quote, so you're telling me that you got out of your car, walked all the way down the other end of pit road to confront that man, and that man knocked the shit out of you? Said driver said, yes, sir. He said, well, my advice to you is never get out of your car and go down to the other pit road trying to find a fight. We'll see you next week. Okay?
Makes sense.
And to my knowledge, those two never had any trouble before. But that's what I mean by that's what they mean by self-policing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like today's deal, if that deal I'm telling you about had been videoed, well, hell, he'd probably have charges against him. Because I thought the guy was dead. I really did. I thought, man, he's done killed this guy. What are we going to do? And the said driver walked by me like, hell, he just got his hair cut, smiling, happy. All right, Rick, see you next week, buddy. And, and it's like, it wasn't that big a deal, but, you took care of things. So but now you can't do that now. I mean, obviously the deal at Daytona in '79 was publicized because CBS Sports was telecasting, and there it was for everybody to see. But believe me, man, there's all kinds of stuff that went on always in the background that kept our sport, self-policed. And those are the stories.
Those are awesome stories. So Let's call an audible and go to what's pissing Rick off this week, because I think it's fight related, and then we'll wrap up our fighting segment here.
Yeah.
Because I saw you on Twitter, and I posted a video last night where Richard Childress is at this charity event, and he basically says, "Hey, I'd have jumped in and protected my guy Kyle Busch," and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. said he's going to wreck Kyle at Charlotte, and I'm going to tell Ricky if he does, like, you're going to get an ass whooping, whatever it is. So then people are saying, "Oh, this guy's pushing 80. He can't do nothing." And I saw you on Twitter say, don't, don't underestimate Richard Childress.
Yeah, I mean, he, bias, of course, because, he's older than me, of course, but I'm sort of the younger part of his generation, you might say. But the thing that pisses me off about it, and I don't know if it's really pissed off, more irritated or pissed off, but the comments of the people talking about Richard, like you just said, old man, he needs to go back. He needs to go he needs to go to the old folks' home. He needs to spend this time trying to get his team running better instead of doing this crap. And I'm like, so much of social media is just the people making comments just really don't know what the hell they're talking about. So they just throw stuff out there. And then what happens, some people come along and believe what they just saw, right? Take it verbatim. The deal with Richard, man, give you a little bit of insight. When I was very young, some teams it'd be a race team, and they go out of business. They have these auction sales, and I went to maybe 3 or 4 of them. Went to Jim Testa's down in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, one time, and we're at this auction, and people involved in racing to be there. Well, there's Richard Childress, and I'm watching him bidding on stuff and buying stuff. And I mean, I'm talking like $10 and $15 items. I'll never forget, he bought an Amco valve grinder. So all your old folks know what I'm talking about. Everybody else on here know what the hell is he talking about. Well, it's an engine piece. It's a machine tool that's used to build engines, works on valves. And I forget what he gave. And I remember watching that deal, and you could tell Richard was struggling. The thing got up to like $70 or $75, and it was a struggle for Richard to go that extra $5. I'm like, and this is while he was still a driver, right? This is before Earnhardt's time. And you could tell Richard was struggling to give that extra $5 for that valve grinding machine. Well, he took all that stuff, and what he did, he built his empire over the years. And his deal, I'm gonna tell you something, his deal is like Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt, it's been chronicled, and a lot of this goes back with Dale, his early years. Dale, wherever he finished in that race, this is before Cup. Wherever he finished in that race is how he fed his family that week or made his payment. That's been codified. It's been talked about. It's verified. That's the way it worked. And so many of us, once I got into Busch, it was the same way for me. That by whatever we won, that's how we kept our team going. And Dale was very, very hungry every time when you go to supper table, right? He was the hungriest guy there ever was when you go to sit down and eat supper. So to eat a good supper, he had to do good on the racetrack, and all that just carried over to the racetrack. And the neat part about Earnhardt, he never lost that drive. From the day he died, he never lost that. He drove every lap of every race like he's going to eat, rice, or he's going to eat a big steak this week. And that's the way he drove. Richard Childress is the same way with owning the team, right? Everything that he worked for and built and done is through his hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. He doesn't have other business. Well, he's starting to get wine stuff and all that, but his money, like Rick and all these other guys, Roger, those guys, they have other avenues to help do the trade-offs from sponsors. Richard doesn't have that. So he has fought and scraped for everything in his life, for everything he's got. And that part is just like Dale Earnhardt. That'll never leave that man, right? And the thing that people didn't pick up on what he said was, yeah, I'm older now. And what did he say, Charlie? What did he say?
I fight differently.
I fight differently. I'm older now and I fight differently. Now, you could take that for what it means. I know what that means, I think, right? If you're going to pick a fight with Richard, even though he's 90,000 years old, you're going to lose, because he's a smart man, and he knows he can't at 80 or 77 years old. He can't fight like he used to be able to fight. He would try, but he also smart enough to realize he's got to have a couple little advantages up his sleeve, right? I would not mess with that man. It's the mentality of the man. It's not You know, it's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the fight in the dog, and that's what you're up against when you come across somebody like Richard Childress. And I'm telling you right now, that wasn't wordsmithing. That was if Stenhouse. And this is folks. This is not going to happen. Stenhouse is over. They don't want any more of this crap. Believe what I'm telling you. Believe me, Ricky doesn't want any more of this crap. But if Stenhouse was to go out there and blatantly wreck Childress's car, you might as well get the big dude from NASCAR, the security guy, to go over where Childress is. You might as well set up all the cameras because he's going to get some kind of licking in on Ricky Stenhouse. It's just the way it is, right? I tell people these stories about our sport, and I always come back to the word barbaric because it seems like it comes down to that sometimes, but it's not really. It's just your mindset, right? And the way these guys think. And Richard's just one of them guys. He says, man, I'm older. I got a new way of fighting. You better believe what he's saying. Don't discredit this man. Don't call him an old fool. Don't do that. He is not that. He is one of those dudes. You know, so many people talk crap. Charlie, you know that they get on there and yap. And they're going to do this, going to do that, and they don't want to do shit. Richard's one of those guys that whatever he tells you, you can take verbatim. He's going to follow through.